Hey everyone, just going to do a quick overview of one of my newest knives that I have in my collection, the Medford Knives Proxima. I've been really getting into Medfords here recently. I purchased one for myself on Christmas, Praetorian tie. It's going to take a little while to get here. The lead time for Medford knives coming directly from Medford is about 5 months, between 4 to 6 months is what they say on the website. So I'm hoping it'll get here by May. As of right now, I have a couple different knives that I'm going to be doing some just overviews on. They haven't been used yet since I'm doing my year-long carry. They just ride secondary in my pocket. They don't get used. They're just carried for fun at this point. Eventually I will carry them, but again, this is just an overview. Don't see many reviews of these in particular knives that I'm going to have coming up here, so let's get started. So first off, this is what the knife comes with. All Medford knives come with this these days. They used to be black. Now they're these kind of coyote tan, kind of pelican boxes. They come inside. You have a little sticker pack with a patch, a couple different stickers. You have your certificate of authenticity, which is a little different than what they used to come with. I have an older Medford now that I just bought. It's old new stock, and I'll have a different it'll have different paperwork inside of it, but the certificate of authenticity with the build date on it. And it also comes with this little warranty literature. And nothing really new is inside it, with the exception of really kind of the change that they added to the policy to where it is you can take apart your Medfords now. It says it right in there that you can, and the warranty is still intact. The only thing that they don't cover is if you take it apart and you mess it up, or if you do any kind of modifications on it. In that case, they won't be covered. But onto the knife, Medford Proxima. Close length on this knife is 4.9 inches, so it is a pretty big knife. Blade length is 3.9 inches. Overall, it is 8.8 inches. So we're going to do some size comparisons here with some slightly more common knives that you might see. First is the Emerson Knives full-size A100. You can see that if we line up the backs, the Medford is a little bit bigger in terms of handle, and you have a little bit longer in the length of the blade. It's also a lot taller in the blade than the Emerson is. Another model, Strider Knives full-size SMF. You can see they're almost the same size. Maybe the Strider edges it out just a little bit, but overall they're about the same size. One more. The Spyderco Endura. Again, almost the same size. Just a little bit, maybe a little bit shorter in the blade, but more or less the same size. So you can see this is kind of a big knife. One more, this is a Victorinox Fieldmaster. Just for kind of a size reference. This is the biggest, I believe, of the standard size Swiss Army knives. So this knife is a pretty thick knife as well. You have blade stock and scale stock of 3/16 inch all the way across the board. Each scale and the blade, 3/16 inches thick. You also have a really thick pocket clip at the back. This is 100% a Medford knife, even though it's a little bit slimmer in profile than when people think of Medford. I'm sure they think of the Praetorian. And this is definitely a big knife, but it's definitely sleeker in design for sure. You have that nice harpoon blade with a little bit of belly. There's almost a radius all the way across the whole cutting edge, which is nice. So next up, as far as a size comparison for thickness, just going to do a comparison right here with the Spyderco Endura. And you can see that when you're talking full clip thickness and everything, this is a thick, really thick knife. And that's okay. Some people just like the thickness of really big chunky knives, and I I like a combination of them. I have really thin, like GEC knives, but I also have these really thick Medfords, and I kind of like everything in between. I'm not stuck into one single kind of knife. As this knife sits, the cost is, base model for this is $575 directly from Medford. That's tumbled blade, tumbled titanium scales, and no upgraded hardware, $575. As this one sits, if you were to purchase this directly from Medford, it would cost you $655, and that's because of the PVD coating. The PVD coating adds, I believe, $50, and then a little bit of change there. So what I like about this knife, for one, is the blade shape. Like I said, I really love this harpoon blade shape. It's not too crazy of a harpoon, but it's just really nicely done. Really nice fuller in there. It's like a step down fuller with a little bit of a different finish on it. It looks bead blasted inside there. I'm not really sure if that's part of the heat treatment that they leave there, or if it's some other kind of finishing that they do on it, but it's really nice. I love the striations of the belt grind on the blade, and it also has a really nice finish on it. This is their tumbled finish, and it's a little bit of a coarse satin, and then they tumble it. It's even tumbled on the satin grinds, which is not something I see companies do. Really, really nice finish, really nice blade shape. It's not overly big. Again, you're looking at a 3.9-inch blade. It's a big knife to be sure, but it doesn't feel like it's that big when you hold it in hand. Now, another thing that I like about it is just the little details that Medford puts on it. You know, stuff like this milling in the handle, this little cutout right here for lock bar access. Just really nice. Again, the stepped finish on the blade. Just these little details, as well as the not quite mirror polished finish on the edge. But that's how it came from the factory. Super, super sharp, almost mirror polished. Little details that Medford puts into their knives. Even the lanyard hole isn't a circle. It's not just a plain circle, it's just a little bit different. They have this really interesting looking flipper tab, and yeah, it is kind of a big flipper. I mean, Nick Shabazz would call this a pocket pecker for sure. But it's an interesting design. It's not boring, which I like. Then the next thing that I like is the overall construction. It's just, I mean, this is a thick knife, but it's all really, really well made. All the fit and finish is excellent on it. Every little part here is rounded, radiused in such a way that it really just speaks to how well they have attention to detail at Medford. Everything is just really well made. The construction is really solid. You have these really big Allen keys for the scales and standoffs and the clip, and you have the 6-gun pivot on this newer model. I love the jimping on it, and it's actually functional. It doesn't look very deep. It's actually not very deep, but if you're gripping in the knife in this fashion, it's really, really effective without being overly so. And the jimping on the lock bar as well, it's just lightly knurled there. It's just enough for you to get a good purchase and be able to close the knife. Same thing on the flipper tab. The flipper tab has the same jimping as the spine of the knife. It's effective, but not overly so. Next thing I like is the action. The action on this knife is incredibly smooth. It's very hydraulic feeling, like a Sebenza. Not quite broken in Sebenza, but a Sebenza 21 for sure. The flipping does take a little bit of getting used to. This doesn't flip like a normal knife because it isn't on bearings, but the action is still really nice. It's a little hard to do it under the camera, but you can completely do it without wrist and get a really nice deployment out of it. The long flipper tab makes it nice, even though, like I said, no bearings. It's on phosphor bronze washers, but the flipping action is excellent on it. It does take a little bit of breaking in. I have been just playing with it on the couch a little bit, and that has helped it. It was initially not stiff, but it was definitely tight, which is kind of what you want. Just a nice little break-in period, and now things, it's not false shut, but it's very nice. That was my fault. It's very nice and hydraulic feeling. Very reminiscent of a Sebenza for sure. I like the opening notch as well. If you don't want to use the flipper, you can also open it with a notch. Kind of like the Praetorians have their fuller. This one, it's 90 degrees. It's very sharp. Not sharp enough to cut you. It's not deep enough to cut you. But you can absolutely just roll it out easily. And even lefty. Very, very easy to open, both left and right-handed, for sure. Really, really love that. And I just love that it's also not obtrusive. You can barely tell that it's even an opening method, but it works perfectly. As far as the clip, I also like that. It's very unobtrusive. It's not very thick as far as like width-wise. It does have, it is very thick sticking out of the pocket like that, but I actually like a shallow carry like this. It allows me to grab onto the knife and not put any pressure on the actual clip portion and just be able to draw it out easily. It does ride kind of high. It's going to ride from about here. So you're going to have about this much sticking out of the pocket. Again, that's not a concern for me. I actually really like that. The retention is excellent. Nice little ramp on it. It has a good retention on it. I wear thicker Nomex pants at work and even in jeans. This thing isn't going to fall out. This is kind of a heavy knife as well, kind of goes with that. It'll hold in the pocket. It's 8.4 ounces, and that's, for most EDC people, that's pretty darn heavy. I don't mind it at all. I like kind of like heavier, chunkier knives to an extent, so not a bad thing for me at all. For others, it might be just too much. So as far as what is kind of like neutral about this knife is this exposed lock face. Now, you can see that this is the actual lock face right here. It's exposed. So if you were to drop it on accident and it were to land right there, it would actually ding up your lock face. Now, I don't think that's going to be a problem because if I drop it, it's probably going to be in the open position because I'll be using it. But it can definitely happen. It's not something that couldn't happen. That may be a deal breaker for some. I'm neutral on it. I don't really care that it's like that. It's kind of an interesting design choice. It is that way because of the way that the stop pin is set. You can see that the stop pin, because it's not a thumb stud, that's where they sit when the blade is closed. When it's open, they kind of sit in this little pocket. And for the knife to do that, the way that it's designed, the lock face kind of has to stick out. Not a deal breaker for me, but maybe a deal breaker for some. As far as things that I don't like about this knife, I don't like the handle length. It just, when I feel it, when I grip the knife like this, it just feels the littlest bit too short. If I choke up a little bit, man, that feels exactly like it should feel. It's just maybe another half an inch, quarter of an inch on the handle would make this feel pretty good. And even an increase in the size of the blade, in addition to maybe a quarter inch, half an inch on the handle, would be fine too, so that you have a little bit more symmetry across it. But yeah, just as I'm gripping it, maybe it's the way that it's contoured in the back here, but it just feels the littlest bit too small. Not a deal breaker, but if I had to pick stuff that I don't like about this knife, that's one thing for sure. The next thing that I don't like is the choil area. Now, it's a really good sharpening choil, for sure. Nice and deep, but I'm not sure if it was meant to be carried and gripped like this. I'm not sure if that was an intended grip because of where the jimping is. you know, I put my thumb there and I put my fingers here, it seems like that's where it wants to sit. If this was just a little bit bigger, I would like it. Again, you increase the handle length, you increase the blade length, you add a little bit of a choil there, more than what's already there, and you would have a good grip in like a choked up position. Again, not a deal breaker. I love the way that the knife's designed, but if I had to pick some negatives, it's definitely, they could have added a little bit there, a little bit to the back. So kind of final thoughts on this knife. It's excellent so far. I can't wait to actually get it out and use it. It's incredibly sharp. I've just, you know, tested it on some arm hair. It's incredibly, incredibly sharp. It's, for being a blade that's 3/16 of an inch thick, it's pretty thin behind the edge. It has a nice thin tip on it. And it's not so thin right here, but as it gets a little farther up the blade, it's actually pretty thin. And overall, just pretty ergonomic, minus this for me. I wear large size gloves. If it was just a little bit longer, I'd like it even more. But in a couple different grips, it's good. You can do reverse grip if that's your thing. Works really well. Not really so much this way, but it's not completely uncomfortable. The build quality is excellent. Flipping action is honestly really good for a Foster Bronze washers flipper. Don't even need any wrist at all. Just a really, really nice knife, and a kind of an alternative. If someone doesn't want something super huge and chunky like a Praetorian, this still has a Medford feel, but it's just a little bit sleeker, a little bit better for EDC. So that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you have a good day.